Alright, this is a van life video, right? This is just basically because there's a lot of people, if you watch van life videos, there's a lot of people in the comments that are trying to do van life but can't afford it, or they're they're trying to afford van life but they can't afford van life. But the elephant in the room is the fact that they're paying the money they could be to live in van life, but they're paying it to a landlord instead. Well, they're not afford a van if they keep paying the rent to the landlord, right? So there has to be a way of actually not paying the rent to the landlord and paying the rent instead in purchasing a decent van. And if you look at a lot of people in van life, they're just buying cheap old vans that tend to break down and all that, yeah, while still paying rent. If you get rid of the rent, you can then get a better quality van, which means your van won't break down as much, which means it'll be more reliable. But there's no link between rented room and a van. So people like that are paying rent. I'm paying rent. Well, I'm not, but indirectly. Yeah. So, but different story. So and then you get if you want to this video, it's van life. I'm a big fan of van life. I've lived in the car for 2 years. If you want to look at that, I've got different videos on my previous YouTube channel, my other YouTube channel. Number Plate Guy is who I am. But so I know a bit about van life, and so this is okay. It's got domain names, but it is the reason I'm waffling here. But I'll get back to the point in a minute, because the reason why I do my domain names, it's not because I enjoy domain names and I enjoy day trading on the internet, swing trade options. But a lot of people in van life don't have a means to earn money while they're living in a van, and or usually they don't have the means to buy a good van from the start, so they buy an old rubbish van and then they'll be paying the price of a decent van in repairs for the van, right? So there should be, if you're paying rent, we're back on track now. If you're paying rent, you'll have a tenancy agreement, right? Most people couldn't pay the £5,000 a year for the rented room they're going to live in this year or next year, right? But I've been looking at vans this morning, right? Because I wouldn't want to live in van life again. But what have I got? I've only got a domain name portfolio and the ability to trade stock market without a fund. That's just. But I should be able to trade other people, shouldn't I? Yeah? For 5% of the profit. But yeah, so people should be able to take that tenancy agreement they've got with a landlord and produce that to a car retailer, a van sales place, a van retailer, and say, I can't afford the £5,000 a year that I pay £5,000 a year for in the rented room in a shared house. But I might as well be able to pay the 4 years of paying rent to a landlord. I should be able to transfer that to a van retailer and just pay the van retailer £100 a week, like you do the landlord, paying the landlord £100 a week for the room. But there's no finance that will actually allow that to happen. So people end up buying rubbish old vans, right, instead of half decent newish vans, right? And when you work that one out, even if it was someone in van life that's got a few quid that just doesn't mind actually doing a private finance agreement or a personal finance agreement, just almost a gentleman's agreement, or whatever you want to call it these days, or the equivalent of the female, whatever. I didn't even. It's just an old term. It's not meant that way. But a person with money, probably having sold a house or whatever, yeah, agreeing to finance it's no different to like a loan where you've got a guarantor. But it's just instead of having the loan company and a guarantor, you just have a person who is prepared to be the guarantor, but they lend you the money for the van, or a person the money for a van. So you bypass the loan company. So all that happens is that would happen is instead of actually the person paying. So a person would actually agree to finance on a loan, and the person paying the loan is using the rental money that they pay a landlord. But instead of actually paying the landlord, they then pay the guarantor for the finance, for the loan of a van to purchase, which means in 3 years, two years' time, they own the van, a decent, good van, outright, instead of having to pay silly rental or high-price finance. So they're actually then returning a profit to someone who lives in the van life community for them actually getting into the van life community. So that it'd be like van life helping van life, effectively. And all it needs is to prove that you've actually paid your rent month on month and month and month. Right? For example, I've paid rent now for 20 years to a landlord. So I've probably wasted about 90 grand, which is about 3 brand new crafters. But I can't afford to buy a crafter, right? So I just carry on. So people just carry on paying £100 a week rent to a landlord. Right? So there should be a van life option, even if it's provided by people in van life, for people to live van life, so that people get a decent van, reliable van that is actually serviced on the dot, maintained by van life, even mechanics live in van life or whatever, so that van life supports van life, so that van life can continue supporting van life. It's never in. But to get people into van life, they've got to have a van that they can live in to call their home. And they've got to leave rented accommodation, which they can't afford to, because they can't afford to buy the van to leave rented accommodation, because they've got to save. And no one can save, right, in today's society. And most people can't borrow either. And that's where we're getting to. And that's van life. So you should be able to say to a van hire company that sells their vans after 2 or 3 years, when after 3 years, they've been maintained on the dot, serviced on the dot, MOT'd on the dot, whatever. Well, no MOT is yet. So the first MOT. And then they should have like a warranty package or a service package. Well, no, you don't have to, because you've just got people in van life that can fix vans. So you just buy a van, a 3-year-old van, the van that's been about for like a 17, it's 2020 now, so it's like we're into 2020, so we're in a 70 plate. So you have a 67 plate van, 68 plate van for about 10 grand. It seems a lot of money when you haven't got 10 quid to your name, but you've got to pay the £100 a week, haven't you? And if you can't, Universal Credit pay it. So someone will pay that for you, but they can't pay it into a van, because they're too busy paying it into rent. And Universal Credit doesn't recognise van life. So then Universal Credit is paying forever to landlords, instead of just paying van retailers for 2 years. And that's it. You've got a van you can live in, and it's bought and paid for. Job done. No more rent. And that's where we're getting to. That's van life. But at some point, someone will actually think, oh yeah, money